Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Whether you are here for the first time or returning, I'm so glad you're here and I hope you enjoy this video. Today's setup is a little different than what you're used to if you have been watching my channel. I'm actually going to be doing a reading journal setup today, which I have never showcased on the channel. I've posted a little bit about it on Instagram, but not even much there, so I'm excited to kind of highlight this thing that I do. As you know, I have multiple journals that I keep at one time. I have a monthly planner, I have just a regular thoughts journal, and I also have this reading journal. As a child, I was obsessed with reading and would usually use mine and my mom's library card so that I could check out tons of books rather than just checking out the required amount for one library card. But then, as I got older and was required to read books for school, I got very burnout and pretty much quit reading completely and took a complete break from it. And so it wasn't until this summer that I actually started reading again. I can't even remember the first book that I picked up and the first book that kind of helped me get back into it. But I'm so glad to be back into it. There's that quote that talks about how when you pick up a book and begin to read, you're transported to another world. And I had totally forgotten that feeling, so I'm so excited to be back in the saddle, if you will. So the way that I use my reading journal is that as you saw me do just a second ago, I just write down the title of the book as well as the date that I finished it. And then I have a fun little alphabet tracker that I fill in for the first letter of the title of the book I read. So Georgia on Her Mind was the first one with a G, so I filled that out. And then I have that little book count tracker that is just to fill in with a color for each book that I read. So I read 4 books this month, but I'm only going to be journaling 3. And they are Georgia on Her Mind, The Book of Lost Friends, and A Stranger's Game. And those are just 3 books that I recently bought from the library, or not bought, borrowed from the library. So those are the ones that I'll be journaling about today. So for the first book, Georgia on Her Mind, I guess I've never done a reading journal YouTube video, so I'm not even really sure what this is supposed to look like or what I want it to look like. But I guess I'll just talk a little bit about the book without hopefully giving any spoilers, just in case you would like to read it. So for each book, I write the title at the top, and then I have a spot for the author's name as well as a 5-star rating scale. So I'll fill in however many stars I give the book, and then a little bit of a summary. The author of this book, her name is Rachel Hauck, or Hoke. I'm not really sure how you say that. It's spelled H-A-U-C-K, so really have no idea how you say that. But I have read one book of hers previously, and it was called The Fifth Avenue Story Society. I'll put that up there just so you can kind of see how gorgeous the cover is. It was definitely one of those reads that I judged the book by its cover because, I don't know how you're supposed to not do that, because if the cover is gorgeous, then surely the book would be good too, right? Anyways, this book was perfect for kind of the setting that I read it in. My family went on a vacation to the Tennessee mountains in October, and it was just so fall-y, and the leaves and the mountains just had all the autumnal colors. And I don't even know if this book is supposed to be that sort of setting/theme, but it definitely fit the bill, and it felt very autumnal and fallish. So I could not put it down, and I think I read all of these books in that one mountain trip, which was like 4 days, so it was like a book a day. But it was just the perfect setting for reading, and I enjoyed it so much. So a little bit about my thoughts on the book. As I said, this is my second read from this author, and my conclusion thus far of this author's writing style is that she enjoys writing almost a Hallmark movie-ish book, if you know what I'm talking about, but with a deeper core and deeper values. So she's a Christian author, which if you were not aware, I'm a Christian, and she always writes kind of a sweet, pure story, and then typically in her books, someone by the end of the book comes to know the Lord, which is always so special to read. My only con for this book would be that it was a little bit too Hallmark for my taste. The last one I read by her wasn't, but this one, the main character ends up with a guy. I'm not going to say who or how or whatever, but she ends up with a guy that was a little too predictable for my taste. So that would be my only con with the book. Also, I should mention that at the end of each book summary, I write the last paragraph of the book. I believe that the last few words of a book are often the most beautiful because the writer just kind of sums up the whole purpose in that book. And so I always finish with that just so I can remember how each book ended. So Georgia on Her Mind was a super sweet read. If you're looking for a relaxing, calming, not too intense read, that one's definitely for you. The next book, in contrast, is A Stranger's Game by Colleen Coble. And this was a mystery/thriller book. And if you know me at all, then you know that my main genre that I typically stick to is like historical fiction with a little bit of romance. So this book was a little bit outside my typical pick. I do enjoy mysteries. I enjoy TV shows like Monk, Psych. I love the new the new Enola Holmes movies. So I really do enjoy mysteries and things like that, and sometimes some thrillers. But typically I don't partake because I don't like to scare myself or make myself anxious with a book that I just think is too intense. So this was kind of a different pick for me, but I ended up really enjoying it. It was just the right amount of intensity without too much drama. And I just really enjoyed it. It is one of those kind of books that each chapter is about a different character, which is my favorite writing style. Instead of the entire book being just a general narrative, each chapter kind of debunks a different character. And so I feel like in that respect, you get to know and fall in love with the characters a lot more. If you'll notice right here, I accidentally put the rating stars in the author box, so that's a real-time journal moment for you, but easy to fix, so keep that in mind if you ever mess up in your journal. All is well. But back to the book. So this was a refreshing read for me, a different read than what I'm used to, and I really loved it. It was one of those difficult to put down, finished it in a few hours, all of those things. But my biggest con for the entire book, and in a sense it ruined it for me, and I'll try to be generic without giving away a spoiler, is that its ending was a bit of a letdown. I think that if the entire book is good and you keep the reader in suspense and you do all the things well, you should at least have a good, suspenseful, and closing ending. But this book did not do it for me. The bad guy, in a sense, of this mystery, the one who was causing all the mystery, or bad girl, was not a character that was substantial enough for me to feel like it even worked. It was a bit of a side character, and I just don't feel like it was fitting for the rest of the book. So in a sense, because, that was the entire mystery kind of culminated into that, it ruined it a bit for me, and I hate that, but that's just the way I feel. I feel like if you have a really good book, you need a really good ending. So those are my thoughts on that book, but a good read, and if that's what you like, then I would definitely suggest it. The last book is The Book of Lost Friends by Lisa Wingate, and this is by far the most controversial of these 3 books that I read. I have very mixed feelings on this book. I gave it a 2-star rating, which I believe is the lowest rating in my reading journal so far. So that can tell you that, that tells you a little bit of my thoughts on it. I actually have tried to read a Lisa Wingate book before called The Prayer Box, but I never finished it. If I feel like a book is a large book and is also not interesting about 1/3 of the way through, then I typically don't finish it. I don't feel like it's worth it. And maybe that should have been a foreshadowing of how I would feel about this book, I'm not sure. But it was a historical fiction, which usually works for me. As I already mentioned, that's my favorite genre. It went back and forth from the past to the present, which is also something I enjoy. And the history that it focused on was slavery, which we all know is a very sad thing to learn about, sad thing to read about, but also a very important thing to learn about. And so my thoughts on the book were that it was good, that the story was interesting. I very much enjoy Lisa Wingate's writing style, at least particularly in this book. I don't remember her writing in The Prayer Box being anything fancy or special, but this book, the wording was just really beautiful, particularly the end, which I put some of that in at the bottom of this summary. So all of those things were working for the book. It was a very interesting story. It wasn't very predictable. It wasn't your typical, I think, slavery story that I have read. But my biggest con and my biggest issue with the book was genuinely just how sad it was. It followed the story of 3 women in the period of slavery. One was a slave, one was the master of the slave, and then one was a half black, half white woman, which was also a very difficult place to be in that time period. And it followed their story in the past, as well as the story of a woman in the present day who's discovering the history of them. So very fascinating, very interesting, but it was just so incredibly sad. And I know that given that it's a book about slavery, I should expect it to be sad, and I did. But my problem was that it wasn't redeeming enough. I didn't feel like there was enough happy or enough of closure to make it worthwhile. Also, the entire book, you know that the main character has some sort of past that she's ashamed of / haunts her in a way, and you don't even know what that past is until the last 2 pages, which I thought was kind of ridiculous. It kind of leaves the reader in complete shock when you close the book, because you're like, what just happened? I wasn't expecting that. So those are my thoughts. And that's the last book I will be journaling about today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I can't wait to see you for the next one. Thank you!